This is everyone's problem, every American's problem. Russia is not just attacking Ukraine, it is attacking United States. If Russia is already attacking US water system, food supplies, and critical infrastructure, while our own leadership downplays it and treats Moscow like a partner, are Americans actually safe right now? The Russians were supposed to occupy Kyiv in 3 days. Instead, 4 years later, they've successfully occupied Washington. Ukraine is fighting for survival. Europe is under coordinated attack, and the United States is standing at a crossroads between leadership and surrender, between truth and convenience, reality versus propaganda, and whether the West still knows how to defend itself when it costs something. I'm Slavie, you're watching SlavaCast on Channel Yarchenko. My guest today is someone who doesn't analyze these issues from a distance. Andrew Mercado is the creator behind Mercado Media. He's been on the ground across the United States where people are protesting ICE, documenting how power responds when it's challenged. He's also been to Ukraine, seeing firsthand what war, resistance, and truth look like. Andrew, welcome.
Thank you so much, Slavie, for having me.
Thank you for being here. Lots to discuss. Make sure you stay with us until the end. We're breaking down one of the most shocking developments of this week, active attacks on United States that almost no legacy media is covering. This needs to be shouted from the rooftops. Before we jump in, like the video, subscribe, share this conversation, and drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's get into it. This week, the gap between reality on the battlefield and the story being told in Washington became impossible to ignore. Despite months of claims that Russia is gaining ground, Russian forces are advancing at a snail's speed. In some sectors, moving meters per day. In others, being pushed back entirely. This is not a winning army. The military burning manpower maintain the illusion of momentum. Andrew, how badly is Russia really doing on the front line compared to the narrative sold in Washington?
The attention is being put on Ukraine only, as if Ukraine is responsible for the war. It's always Zelensky's responsibility to end it. Ukraine didn't start the war, right? It's always been Russia trying to prevent Ukraine from having a sovereign, independent country. Ukraine's fighting for its independence. The Russians continue their fight. They've gone all in completely. Their entire economy is dedicated to this war, and the falsehoods in the media and Donald Trump and his administration and how they're treating Ukraine is just because of the Russian influence that unfortunately we're seeing seep into this administration, often through media propaganda narratives. They put out like 15, 20 news stories just to get you confused, and they're all lies, but they're all different types of lies, including the results on the front lines and what we're seeing on the invasion of Ukraine as a whole. The Western alliance was stronger, and right now we just do not have that. We don't have a weekly meeting of the Department of Defense. We don't have the coordination.
Last week, the Trump administration signaled a new national security strategy, and it aligns almost perfectly with what Russia has wanted for years. The strategy prioritizes ending war quickly. This approach mirrors core Kremlin objectives, weakening NATO, splitting the US from Europe, freezing the war on Russian terms. Andrew, when you look at this new national security strategy, does it function as an American strategy, or does it read like Russia's wish list?
It feels like Russia's, number one, trying to control the narrative. All the pressure, like I said, is on Ukraine to end the war, even though they didn't start it. There's almost zero energy directed at the Kremlin. The foreign policy has very much capitulated to the Russian demands and have not been placed with the support of Ukraine.
Have you ever thought that this day would come that United States would be accommodating Russia?
Yeah, it's very sad. It's very sad to see. That was a big fear when Trump and his his first presidency that Russia would start to seep into our government more because he has a connection leading into the 2020. A lot of the narratives hitting this administration and those that were supporting it were a lot of Russian. We had the money from the tenant media with Tim Pool and Benny Johnson and others. Those are some major influencers that within Trump's sphere, the writing was on the wall. As soon as Russia invaded Ukraine, there was unity right away. Everyone could condemn it. And then over time, in that very year, in 2022, Russia's propaganda started kicking in and money started getting paid to American influencers. And then their narrative started changing to, this is wrong. This is illegal invasion. It's a genocide of Ukrainians to, this is taxpayer money. You can easily see how the money hit pockets and their narrative started switching. Someone that has to sift through media, reporting the truth, paying attention. In the background, I knew that, hey, if Trump were to become president again, the Russians will have an app in on the American government, which obviously hurt Ukraine in the long run. I want Ukraine to win. Like, I was against Biden when it came to restrictions on weapons. I was going to DC with the Action Summit so we could try to get the F-16s done. We tried to get the long-range weapons because it was ridiculous. Biden should have never held Ukraine back. The alternative was Donald Trump with connections to the Kremlin. I think it goes really deep. Ukraine might not be the number one story, but when number one stories happen, it's important to bring Ukraine to them. He told everybody he was going to end the war in 24 hours. We're about to hit the 4 years of Russia invasion, and we're not anywhere closer to a peace deal.
We're further away.
I agree. I would have to agree.
The people who follow the war casually see peace deal everywhere along the media. They think it must be getting close because it's a peace deal. We shouldn't even be calling it a peace deal because we're further than ever from getting anything done. And that's because Russia does not want to stop the war. They can't. They won't. Can't stop, won't stop. If the United States abandons deterrence, what does that do to global security?
It weakens too our security. It allows Russia to build new alliances. Not just obviously very bad for Ukraine because the invasion continues, the genocide continues, the bombings continue. European security, which is also American security because we all have trade, we all work together. And if Russia's destabilizing that, it affects all of us.
If Ukraine falls, what can happen after that?
It sets a precedent that Russia launch a full-scale military invasion, a few years of propaganda, and they'll repeat it in Moldova. They'll repeat it in Estonia. It works. It provides them a blueprint of what to do next. Ukraine is a refined version of their invasion of Georgia. That's a refined version of their invasion of Chechnya in the 90s. They're not being held accountable from the global, the political, the UN. Europe is given lip service. They're given weapons, but Ukraine is the front door to Europe, and Russia is trying to remove Ukraine and occupy it. And then what? Poland is there. Poland's NATO. Then they're right on NATO's door, and which is what Russia wants. Russia always says that it's about NATO encroachment. Countries have to apply to join NATO, and it takes a very long time. NATO isn't an imperialistic force. They're not occupying countries or invading countries. That's what Russia's doing, though. Russia's invading their neighbors to occupy them, deport kids, snatching the youth up out of Ukraine and Georgia and other places that they've invaded, and indoctrinate them. Until they're held accountable, they're going to continue. If they are successful in Ukraine, in this invasion, they're only going to continue.
Absolutely. I'd say that it would be a start to World War III because it gives China go ahead and attack Taiwan, all dictators, strongmen. It opens the door because it's punished, and it leaves Europe very vulnerable because now United States doing Russia's bidding, United States will pull out of NATO. Now troops out of Romania, it leaves Europe vulnerable to Russia. They want to carve up the world into multipolar world, into three empires, United States, Russia, and China. And everybody else that's a smaller nation would be absolved in scary times. The Trump administration has been escalating pressure on Ukraine in multiple ways, all at once. Publicly, Trump accused Zelensky of avoiding elections, calling him a dictator without elections. Language that mirrors Kremlin propaganda, almost word for word. Behind the scenes, U.S. officials have continued signaling that Ukraine must be realistic about territorial concessions, even as Russia is barely moving on the battlefield, paying an enormous price in lives and resources. At the same time, U.S. military aid has been effectively non-existent, while Russia faces no equivalent pressure to withdraw, to stop bombing civilians, or even to acknowledge its war crimes. We never see Trump holding Russia accountable for anything, despite the fact that Russia is the aggressor, the invader, the perpetrator of this war. So, Andrew, when you look at this pattern together, the rhetoric, the pressure on Ukraine, the new Trump administration's national security strategy, the complete absence of pressure on Russia, does this look like a miscalculation, or does it look like intentional alignment with Russian objectives?
I think it's a combination of intent and useful idiocy. And that's the combination. And that's what Russia loves, right? They love people that will do their bidding for them because they think it's their opinion, but it's really just tailored propaganda that
appeasement has never stopped wars. What message does this send to the rest of the world when the United States pressures the victim more aggressively than the aggressor? Is United States still the leader of the Western world?
It's getting harder to say that factually, technically, because of the U.S. military strength. That's not what people are feeling right now. That's not what Ukrainians are feeling. We're still the strongest military in the world, but we're led by a clown. There's a lot of appeasement to Russia that make it worse. America's turned its back on Ukraine. It's turned its back on Europe and the security apparatus. And it's just very troublesome, especially because of the U.S. military capabilities, our tech companies, AI. If Russia's influence is within that, more of a hold on our country, which will in turn hurt the rest of the world.
In the deal, they want to build data centers in Donetsk.
Terrible. And that's just resource grabbing. The Russians wanting to do that. U.S. also fleeced Ukraine out of resources. They made Zelensky sign the resource deal for nothing. No security guarantees, no extra weapons, no extra technologies. You have a combination of the American government really screwing over Ukraine, the Russians with their invasion, data centers, and dig into these occupied parts of Ukraine.
There's a huge fight over resources of the world. The United States wants is now Russia's resources. They got Ukraine's through that deal, but didn't get any security guarantees from it. Moscow has been explicit about its goal to dismantle the post-World War order and replace it with a multipolar system dominated by a few empires, where power decides borders and democracy is optional. Russia is attacking Europe and United States from the outside, militarily, economically, and through hybrid warfare. The United States, under Trump, is attacking Europe from the inside, undermining alliances, empowering pro-Russian far-right movements, weakening sanctions, and reframing Ukraine as the problem instead of the victim. Europe is being squeezed from both sides. Ukraine is the front line. And yet, as this realignment accelerates, the Democratic Party is almost silent. There is no unified message, no sustained pushback, no clear moral line defending Ukraine, Europe, or the idea that borders cannot be changed by force. Clarity could still change the trajectory of this history. Midterms are also around the corner. Andrew, where are the Democrats right now? Not just politically, but morally, as the U.S. drifts towards alignment with this authoritarian worldview.
With the Democratic Party, it's tough because you got people in there that are they don't move on things, but then you got the Republican Party, which is MAGA and controlled by Russia. So altogether, for the American government as a whole is just not interested in supporting Ukraine right now. And it's just sad to see. We signed security guarantees to help Ukraine. We took Ukraine's nukes away and the Budapest Memorandum, and we owe Ukraine our security for doing that because Ukraine was a global power with those nukes. It's a deterrent. And unfortunately, we're not living up to that. So it's really a lot of lip service.
The Democrats can do some great things right now and push back. So is this silence about fear of political backlash, or has the Democratic Party lost confidence in defending democracy?
It's just they don't have any power at all right now. Like the Republican Party has the full control that Trump is president. They have the Supreme Court, the Senate, the House. So when Trump won, I went to another action summit and we only could really advocate for a sanction. And we couldn't even do weapons because because they have the controls. Even if you wanted the Democratic Party to do anything, the full power is with the Republicans right now. So it's not much even they could do, even if they wanted.
As an American, I see a lot of Americans now experience wrath of Trump administration, and prices are way up. It's not the golden age. As promised, you have farmers that the money is going to Argentina instead of the farmers here in the United States. People are fine, comfortable. At least the people that thought they would experience this golden age, it's not all what it amped up to be. Will there be a blue wave in the midterms?
It's looking like it. I mean, you have special elections this year and the Democratic Party is winning. Even that our safe red districts are close. It does look like there will be a swing and the Democrats have a good chance in the midterms. But we got to see. Every day is something new. This administration makes it hard to gauge the vibe. But in terms of what the politics of it, though, Democrats are on a string of wins right now. When we only really have two major parties to choose from, if Republican Party bad, then Democratic Party is really the other choice.
I hope so. Democrats, if they step in, get the blue wave going and they win, they can really change not only domestically, but save the world from what the Trump administration is doing, Russia's bidding.
Now, there's certainly more of a pathway. They're not perfect either. We had issues with Biden and lack of will and strength, but at least there's a pathway. Like we had a good lobbying pathway. The contact group was good. Having Lloyd Austin meet with the leaders of Europe and Zelensky, weapons were going slow. But we had stuff happening. Right now, that door is shut. And with Democrats, at least there's a door.
Despite what the Trump administration is doing, stalling aid, pressuring Ukraine, echoing Kremlin framing, American public opinion has not turned against Ukraine. In fact, recent polling shows a clear majority of Americans still support aiding Ukraine. Roughly 6 in 10. Support is higher now than it was in the first months of the full-scale invasion. At the same time, negative views of Russia are actually at a historic high, with over 80% of Americans holding unfavorable views of Russia. In other words, what the Trump administration is doing does not reflect where the American public is. If public opinion supports Ukraine and opposes Russia, who exactly is the Trump administration governing for right now? Whose interests are being prioritized instead?
Certainly not the American, even the ones that voted for him, even the ones that were convinced of his lies. They're seeing it. No one can, the affordability is terrible. We got federal agents all through our streets. The National Guard is deployed. He's appeasing Putin and other dictatorships. Trump is really attracted to that type of power. He doesn't want to govern equal representation and everybody has a voice. He wants to rule by a dictatorship. It's damaging. People are seeing it. They're seeing wins for the other party and more people are showing up, and a lot of Americans just were not interested in the election, unfortunately. And then we see the results and now we're living in it.
Seems like America needed to learn a lesson.
Hot stove theory, right? We got to put our hand back on the hot stove to see it and to know it hurts.
But at what point does ignoring the public's will on the war, democracy, and international law start to erode the legitimacy of the government itself?
His approval ratings are certainly terrible. We're heading in that direction. More and more people are like, our government is clowns. Official government entities posting. It's just weird. That ruins the image of the government. People respect it less. If you want people to respect the government, you're not doing a very good job of PR. It seems like they don't even care.
So this week, President Zelensky deliberately shattered one of the most important illusions of this war. For months, Russia has been selling a very specific story to Washington that it is steadily winning, that Ukraine is losing territory irreversibly, and that the only realistic outcome is for Ukraine to accept land grabs and frozen borders. Kupiansk was central to that narrative. For months, the Kremlin publicly claimed that the city had fallen. Putin announced it himself. They even staged a media spectacle inviting foreign journalists to tour the area during the so-called ceasefire to visually lock in the idea that Russia had secured control. That was meant to be a show for Washington. It was designed to convince U.S. officials that the facts on the ground had already changed, that negotiations should now reflect Russia's gains. Instead, Zelensky put on a show of his own. He showed the truth. He stood less than a mile from Russian positions under active drone and artillery threat in front of a Kupiansk city sign and said, "Reality speaks for itself." In one move, the illusion collapsed. That growing gap between reality and perception is now, unfortunately, shaping U.S. policy. Who do you think Trump is getting his understanding of this war from? How dangerous is it when U.S. policy is driven by curated narratives instead of what's actually happening on the ground?
Well, he's getting influenced by those that will lie to him.
There is no one in that administration to really push back and tell the truth. When Donald Trump says he just wants the killing to stop, who exactly is he talking about? Is he talking about Ukrainian civilians being bombed in their homes, hospitals, and cities, or the massive Russian military losses that are bleeding Putin's army dry? Those are not the same thing, and only one side has the power to stop the killing tomorrow by withdrawing. Is Trump talking about Russian soldiers or Ukrainian civilians?
He's talking about Russian soldiers to appease Putin. It serves a propaganda purpose. Ukrainians don't need to be told that war is bad. They're experiencing it. It does nothing for anyone other than appease the aggressor.
Seems like when Trump is talking about he just wants the killing to stop, and I'd have to agree, he is talking about Russian soldiers. There's massive, massive losses daily that Russia is suffering. But he is getting mad at Ukraine for it, for defending itself. It's really a strange kind of line of thinking. When you look at how Russian propaganda spreads today through platforms like X, through influencers, as we mentioned earlier, like Tim Pool, Benny Johnson, through populist media ecosystems, it no longer looks like random misinformation. It looks like a coordinated information operation. At the same time, the Trump administration appears to be moving in the opposite direction, mirroring Russian narratives, attacking U.S. institutions, delegitimizing democratic allies, and laundering Kremlin talking points under the banner of free speech. So, when the MAGA media ecosystem becomes indistinguishable in language, targets, and narratives from a Russian information operation, how worried should we be?
Very worrisome. Got to combat it with the truth because we have free speech in America.
That's very true, but the truth is being silenced. We will get to that in a second, but is this just political radicalization or is it now a national security threat?
I think it's a national security threat, especially since it's affecting our president or the cabinet. It all connects in the decision making, the foreign policy, the domestic policy. It's all connected.
This week, reports surfaced that Skydance, which has already taken control of Paramount, is now exploring consolidation moves involving Warner Brothers, the parent company of CNN. Skydance is controlled by the Ellison family, major Trump-aligned donors with clear right-wing political ties. According to multiple industry insiders, the goal isn't just consolidation, it's neutralization. This is happening as Donald Trump escalates attacks on any outlet that challenges him, branding, fact-checking, and scrutiny as fake news, while rewarding outlets like Fox, which now operate less as journalism and more as messaging arm of political power. The result is a media landscape increasingly resembling the Russian model. Networks that serve power are protected. Networks that question power are targeted, and ownership becomes a tool of political control. So, how dangerous is it when media consolidation begins to align directly with authoritarian political goals?
It eliminates free speech. It creates an echo chamber where only the approved messaging, and it removes free thought. It's a very slippery slope to go down, which is why I support independent media, free media, anybody trying to tell the truth, or at least put the truth out there, especially in the environment that we're in.
If critical legacy media is neutralized or collapses under this political pressure, what replaces it? And how quickly does a democracy slide into a reality where power controls truth instead of being challenged by it?
Crisis actors and propagandists, which out here, I'm out there covering current events on the ground, and I'm seeing Trump approved media acolytes, journalists. I think they're journalists. They call themselves that. They'll go out, provoke a protest. The protest will respond. That person will act like a victim. Those sympathy grifts, get a lot of money and keep this cycle going. And that's what we're unfortunately going to keep seeing. They're going to be wielding those type of people out in our streets to provide that type of media.
What are you seeing on the ground right now? Have you seen these kind of crisis actors personally?
Oh, they've confronted me. I've already had interactions. I'm going to tell you how I feel about you. I don't think you're out here to tell any type of story. You're out here to try to push a narrative and make yourself into a victim. Lying about the protests, trying to cause altercations with the protester. And then when the protest responds, you want to play games. And I'm calling it out whenever I do see it and continue to.
This is everyone's problem, every American's problem, because this week, the U.S. Department of Justice announced new federal criminal charges against a pro-Russian hacker tied to multiple Kremlin-backed cyber attack groups, including No Name 05716 and Cyber Army of Russia Reborn, that have been targeting critical American infrastructure. The indictments accuse these groups of carrying out hundreds of attacks worldwide, including U.S. water systems, meat processing plants, and other vital systems that provide essential services to everyday Americans. These aren't theoretical threats. Prosecutors allege real-world damage from releasing hundreds of thousands of gallons of drinking water to spoiling food supplies to threatening public health and safety. This comes amid broader warnings from U.S. cyber agencies that Russian state-linked groups are actively probing and attacking critical infrastructure across the country. Russia is not just attacking Ukraine. It is attacking United States. And yet, we have leadership in Washington that increasingly echoes Russian talking points, downplays Russian culpability, and frames the so-called negotiations as though Russia is a legitimate partner instead of a hostile power. If Russia is already attacking U.S. water system, food supplies, and critical infrastructure, while our own leadership downplays it, echoes Kremlin narratives, and treats Moscow like a partner, are Americans actually safe right now?
It's very concerning. Our security apparatus, with Russia's control over it, it's a pretty valid thing to be concerned of.
For people watching who feel the ground shifting beneath them, what is the one thing they can do today to defend democracy, the world order, and their own safety as well?
Show up to the protests with the Ukrainian flag. Even though the protests are focused on American domestic issues, Ukraine is an American domestic issue too. We're supposed to be supporting Ukraine. You really are worried about the Russian influence? Come to the protests or come to where people are gathering and talk about it. Bring your knowledge about your fears of Russia and your understanding of their goals.
From what you're seeing out there, do you think America still knows how to defend democracy?
Yeah, they're capable. We still got people in leadership positions in the military. You still have Democratic politicians, and the Republicans are not doing well right now. America can swing back to normal here. It's tough though. We're very cutthroat political climate. It's like WWE politics right now. It's all about whether our country can cool down and cool off and return to normalcy.
When you said WWE politics, that's so on the dot exactly what it is right now. Very volatile and hostile atmosphere.
Oh, yes.
Andrew, what's next for you? Any fundraisers, any promos? What are you doing?
I'm out here covering the ongoing ICE raids in the Twin Cities. We're covering the protests against the Trump administration that have happened all year that will continue. Ukraine, shouting out other fundraisers. I'm trying to do the best I can to still keep Ukraine in the news and keep people focused on what Russia's doing.
And thank you so much for all the work that you do. Guys, tune into Andrew's channel and watch his coverage of what's going on in the United States right now. So thank you so much, Andrew, for being here on SlavaCast. Hope you come back.
Thank you so much, Slavie, for having me. It's good to talk to you on your platform by itself. You've been a great host on the Shills, and we've talked there for a while, but now it's good to be on your platform. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for being here. And thank you so much to the viewers. Thank you to those who support the channel. If you'd like to contribute to production, Buy Me a Coffee link is in the show notes below. Ukraine is showing us what courage looks like. Right now, it is the new home of the brave, the front line of the free. And as Americans, this is our moment to remember who we are, what we stand for, and what our values actually mean when they're tested. Democracy isn't free, freedom isn't automatic, and morals only matter when they cost something. So we follow Ukraine's lead, stand firm, we tell the truth, and we don't look away. On that note, be fierce, be brave like Ukraine, God bless America, and Slava Ukraini.